talked about this last week a little bit, how Jonathan Nolan should get the reins given to him by Amazon to make a James Bond movie, because the Nolans are very rooted in James Bond. They are big fans of it. Well, apparently, rumor has it, Amazon's first choice to make a James Bond film is Christopher Nolan, and yeah, why wouldn't you want that? He's arguably one of the biggest directors on the planet right now. He's in the Mount Rushmore of movie directors. He is an all-time iconic, great visionary. He is my personal favorite director on the planet. He loves his genre, but he loves to bend genre in these science fiction ways, a la my favorite movie, Inception. He likes to play with time, like in movies like Dunkirk and Inception and Tenet, and he always just does something really interesting. Like, you're not just getting a Christopher Nolan heist movie, you're getting a heist movie where they're going inside people's dreams within their dreams, and they're planting an idea, and it's this big elaborate complex thing, and then there's a train going through the city street where there's no tracks, and it's just crazy. And he gave me The Dark Knight, which is my favorite Batman movie of all time and my favorite superhero movie of all time. Now, the fact that they want him to do a James Bond movie is kind of rooted in the fact that he approached the Broccoli's to do one, but the problem was, at the time, he only wanted to make one, and he wanted final say on the end result, and you just don't get that in the Broccoli household. You don't get final say on James Bond. They do. So he kind of stepped away because he's the kind of person where he doesn't want to be hamstrung. He doesn't want to have his hands restrained by the Broccoli's in terms of how much he could be creative. So he walked away to go off and do The Odyssey, and rightfully so. I mean, everybody on the planet and their mother is excited to see that film. But I understand Amazon pretty much saying, like, we'll wait for you to make this, because James Bond is in a state right now where, look, at the end of the day, I love James Bond, but I'm not going to shy away from the fact that he is a misogynistic, womanizing asshole that also just happens to save the world all the time and do it looking good in a suit and a Walter PPK. But you kind of need to do something to change up the Bond formula, because how do you have Bond in this current day and age? I really don't think you do. I mean, I'm sure somewhere out there is a director and a filmmaker that has a good story that takes place in the year 2025. Listen, I'm sure there's a director and a writer out there that has a good idea for a James Bond film in the future where he's using a flying car. I'm not saying there isn't, and would that be cool to see one day? Fuck yeah. But for the sake of this conversation, I think, at least for me, the thing that I love about James Bond is the charismatic, swashbuckling adventure he goes on and the gadgets. And what would be really fun and a way to breathe new life into James Bond and kind of put it in an era that you're not like, oh, well, there's cameras everywhere and there's cell phones, and how does a spy exist in this world? And that's do exactly what Christopher Nolan wanted to do and make a period piece James Bond film where he's like in the 1940s. You could have all these crazy cool gadgets. You don't have to worry about modern day technology. You could bring it back to all the really cool old school gadgets like the exploding toothpaste, which was from Mission Impossible, I believe. I might be mixing up my spies. But anyway, it just allows you to kind of do something that you haven't seen in a James Bond film ever, really. Even like going back to one of the first ones that took place in like the 60s, like you never really got to see him back in that olden era before a lot of technology existed. And I think it would be really cool for Nolan to go and do a period piece James Bond film. Not only will it feel fresh because of the time setting, but you have the greatest director on the planet making it. Now, like I said before, Nolan expressed to the Broccoli's that he only wanted to make one movie, and I think that's okay. I think if he comes in and he makes the first one for Amazon and sets the tone and gets the actor and sets the world up, does a little bit of world building in it, then after the first one, he can go off to make whatever movie he wants to make about a floating toaster in space, and his brother could step in and make a sequel, or any other director could come in and just make the sequel again, because Nolan already created the world. He already cast it. He already set the tone of it. So now somebody just needs to come in and further that story. They're not creating this entire world out of nothing, and it'll still very much be a Nolan-like film because they're just using the world that he already created. So I don't think it's a bad thing that he only wants to do one, and I think it is a great idea that Amazon waits for him to finish The Odyssey and then just hands him James Bond on a silver platter, wipes their hands and goes, we're not even going to think twice. Do what you're going to do. We're not going to second guess you. We're not going to question you. We're not going to put restraints on you. You want to film it over the course of 13 years? You film it over the course of 13 years, Chris. We don't care. And they're going to let him do whatever he wants. And I think that that's really a good thing. Everyone is so afraid, including me, of what Amazon is going to do to James Bond, how they could potentially butcher it and try and mass produce James Bond-like content where we have 46 different TV shows, 14 movies of characters we don't give a shit about, and James Bond just sucks. Get Christopher Nolan to come in. He's literally the safest bet Amazon could pick. It's the guy that grew up loving James Bond that is now the greatest director working today, and have him make this movie, and I think that will calm a lot of people down and make it feel like James Bond is in good hands.